Hey, everybody. Welcome back here to the IT 297 internship interviews here at Mount West for the spring of 2026. Today, I'm talking with Charlotte Alesi. How are you, Charlotte?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. So, Charlotte, I know, spoiler alert for everybody out there, you are one of my network and cloud administration students. I always like to talk to people, how they got into IT, how the bug bit them, their journey to come here, and any advice you would have for somebody through our program or through your internship. So, yeah, first question is, tell me about how technology, bit you in some way.
Well, when I was a kid, of course it was Atari 2600. But, once I got out of school, because it was way different then than it is now as far as technology, using computers and that kind of thing. Because back then it was just like black and white. You're putting numbers and stuff in there. It's nothing like it is today. I did actually think about trying to do that kind of stuff when I was in high school, but then, life happened. I moved on. And then I was at my job for almost 19 years and I lost my job. And then my girlfriend was like, I was devastated. I'd never been fired before. So my girlfriend was like, hey, you should go back to school. I did. And she's a travel nurse and makes killer money. And I was like, I need big girl money. I'm going to go and I'm going to do that. So I, went to DHHR and I talked about cybersecurity and they said the best place to go is Mount West.
Okay. And I will, knowing what I know, I will foreshadow you were a manager before. So in that particular vein, that's going to be very helpful from a customer service standpoint when we talk about your internship. But you went ahead and you came here. I think originally you started in cybersecurity and then you hopped over to my administration.
Mm-hmm.
And here you are now at the end of your 2 years through that. What advice might you have for somebody who's just starting off their career here?
The best advice is definitely ask questions. Don't be afraid. Take lots of notes. I had purchased a recorder to record classes, and after I packed up my house, I don't know where that is now. So I end up watching a lot of videos more than once to make sure that I don't miss anything. But ask questions, take lots of notes. Absolutely.
It's all good advice. And now you're currently doing your internship with Intiva.
Yes.
We've talked this semester. We've talked with Alexander, who's been at Intiva. So he's had some experience there. You had already had a job before, like you said, you'd even been a manager. So I'm curious, from a non-IT job, managerial, coming over to Intiva, were there things that surprised you about that, or did you have any misconceptions when you came in? You're like, oh, that didn't happen at all. Like, what was that transition like for you? More the same, or rather different?
Well, the job itself, dealing with customers, I had no problem with it all. Always tell the customer what you can do. That tends to extinguish the flame if they're really upset. Always tell them what you can do. But, Intiva had acquired another business, so therefore they got inundated with phone calls. So, we as a team ended up on the phone more than we were helping, which, I had no problem. I was like, yeah, I got this, So, I've seen so many of them really excel in there, So I'm really happy, Alexander and Brittany and Devin, they've all done really well, so I'm really happy for them that they've done it. I don't feel like I've learned as much as I really needed to, on the back end of it all. But, I am glad to have the experience that I do have.
I would say you probably had a sizable leg up, though, from the managerial side of the fence. So, like, the things they were learning leaps and bounds, you had probably already attained that from your prior job. So, fair enough. Is there advice you would have for people before starting an internship like Intiva, that they should know about, things you think they should prepare for, that type of thing?
Do some research. Google it if you have to. That's what I have done, when I've got customers that they want waited on right now. They don't want me to just make a ticket. They want service right now. So I have tried to Google some things. Some things I was able to help, and some things I was like, hang on, let me get somebody to help me because I wasn't sure and I didn't want to mess anything up. But yeah, don't be afraid to ask questions. Don't be afraid to step out of your comfort zone.
Along those lines with comfort zones and stuff, and you having to take calls from people, you're taking calls from people who are not technical by nature, and you're having to listen to what they say and hopefully translate that into more of a technical lens. So, I mean, we talk about cultural intelligence and how us techies can communicate our thoughts and fixes to layman's. Um, how do you get the information out of the people? How do you get it out of them in a non-technical way that you can then put into the ticket, that type of thing for Intiva?
Well, I created my own little spreadsheet, and because I didn't want to keep asking what their name was, what their problem was, so I would type that information, and then I would put it into the ticket because that was easier for me. My memory,
Sure.
is not the greatest. So I would do that to help myself and to help them. And then I would repeat back to them what I had typed. And if I didn't have it exactly correct, okay, I'm sorry, let me go ahead and correct that. And that way I'm getting the information, that they're telling me correct. But as far as the technical terms, I try to understand where they're coming from because as someone who didn't grow up with the technology, I understand, and I have been on the other side of the phone calling for help. So I always tell them, oh, honey, I understand, let me, I've been where you are. So let me go ahead and see what I can do. But, I try to definitely understand just because I didn't understand all the technical terms. I didn't even, when I got to Gary's first class, I was like, oh my God, what am I doing in here? I don't even know what these people are talking about. All these acronyms, it was crazy to know that there's a website.
Right. But then also, like you're saying, like you can realize that was not too long ago and these people were where you were. And so you can empathize with what they've got to. I mean, I think it's great that you're taking down their name. I think of like, marketing or salesman 101 is repeat their name. You were listening, repeat what they're asking so you can make sure you heard them the way they were saying them. That's great communication skills to make sure that they realize, oh, she is listening to what I'm saying. Like she did pick up on all that stuff. So that's great stuff that transcends whether it's technological or not. That's just communication between two people, making sure you feel heard.
Absolutely. Well, sometimes after I repeat it back, they're like, oh, well, wait, I wanted to add this too.
May jog something with their memory as well.
Absolutely. And, I always make sure I'm like, is there anything else that you would have like them to look at while they're in there, while you have them working on it? Most of the time it's no, but sometimes they may add other things too.
True. Good point. And that saves time for the technician not having to go back and check things. And so, yeah, if you're thorough in the beginning, that's a great way to go ahead and start that off. At Intiva, are you all typically, what's a work day like for you? Are you typically Monday through Friday, 8 to 5 type establishment?
He'll work with your schedule, because we are taking classes. So he'll work with your schedule. It's a minimum, I think, of 24 hours that you're supposed, or maximum, that you're supposed to work. So they're very flexible on that, so really, you can go in the morning, take your class, come back and work whatever, you work out with Jacob. And he's a great boss, by the way. I really like the fact that he went here and he understands, kind of where we are.
Mm-hmm. He's been there. He's been there in your shoes. But what I always wanted to check too is, some places maybe you have to take the phone home at night because someone's got 24-hour monitoring, and if the phone rings at 10 p.m., you're on the spot. That's not happening here. The establishment is an 8 to 5 Monday through Friday. is what you can work hours wise here, correct?
As far as the interns, yes. I know
Mhm.
that I think they have 24/7 as far as, when you get a job and, you get your schedules or whatever from there. But as far
Right.
as here, yeah, no, it's just till 5.
And I know, I mean, Intiva is a rather large company, and so I probably only heard about, scratching the surface. The people that I've heard that have gotten full-time positions from here, at least on the teams I've heard them on, they then typically work remote. So they're, on a headset at their house on their laptop, similar to kind of what you all hear, but you can, roll out of bed, put on the headset and go to work.
Absolutely.
Let's see if oh yeah, the hours. Yeah, Xavier. Basically here down the hall with Intiva, the available hours you could work, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Monday through Friday. But some of that's limitations is based on our building. Our building's not open on Saturday or Sunday. But for the interns, the block of times that you can work there are from 8 to 5 Monday through Friday, and you can help set that schedule with Jacob, whatever works best for you there.
As long as the school is open too.
Yeah, that's true. As long as the school is open too. Because I think like during the summer, for example, we're closed July 4th, and July 4th on the weekend. Will then state employees still get that holiday sometime? So maybe the Monday or the Friday, before or after you get that. But yes, as long as the building's open, then Intiva would be open for you to go ahead and work there. Um, Before I open up to questions, are there any other advice or tips or comments you think people should know about based on your time here that you think would be good for them to know to be forewarned and forearmed in that case?
Mm, drink a lot of Red Bull. I do.
Drink a lot of Red Bull. Does it really give you wings?
It keeps my eyeballs open for
Oh,
sure.
there you go.
But lots of notes. Take lots of notes. It doesn't hurt to take lots of notes. And if it's messy, go back and rewrite it so that you understand it later. So that what if you get a job and you're like, oh my gosh, I know I learned that, but that way you can reference it.
I know when Jack Loker was a professor here, he had his students keep a networking notebook. So all the projects they would do, they would go ahead and put stuff down in there. My grandfather was a welder, and he had a book where he kept all of his different trailers he made and stuff like that, all of his notes about what bolts he used, carriage bolts and stuff like that. So it's a useful thing for you to have to be able to look back on. If you're like, what did I use for that? Yeah, it's an excellent piece of advice. And
Absolutely.
if you're not a physical person, it can be digital as well. But the idea is keeping notes on what you've done. And part of that can even be stuff that you do for your IT portfolio to keep the projects to where the next job you go to, you can be like, here are the things that I've actually done. Check this out. And you can show your work. I was just talking to Isaiah earlier. He talked about that in a lot of the jobs he's doing for Digit 3, he will take a picture of the finished product. So he can have that to look back on and be like, I did a good job here and this and this. And he can reflect back on that. I was like, that's a really good idea. So in general, document your work because it may come back again. You may say one day, this feels really familiar. Let me look back at my notes. Did I have a ticket like this before? So it can be a really good experience to have that all documented.
I would also say, don't be afraid to ask questions. The only dumb question is the one you didn't ask.
Jonathan, who's in there with you as well, he said, yeah, he went ahead and said there 8 to 5 for interns, and they do have a knock tech. They do have knock tech team positions as well. So there's those out there. But I know, like in general, a lot of these questions I already know the answer to, but the people who are, because I'm hearing them these year and year again. But yeah, for the internships, they want to go ahead and have you do a normal business hours. But I know prior people that have left, maybe they're working for clients who are typically in California. So their day is not 8 to 5 here. It's more like 11 to 8 here because they got to be up at 8 to 5 for those people. So there's some flexibility once you get your foot in the door with a full-time position, depending on what makes sense for your clients and their needs. Does anybody out there have any questions today here for Charlotte about her time at Intiva or her time here at Mount West? While I give people the time to go ahead and work on this, I think you asked this question of a student previously, so I'll turn the tables on you and
Ooh.
ask you. Are there any, you can redact names. Are there any memorable client experiences you've had? Any memorable problems that have come up? You've been typing a ticket for, and you're like, I know the answer to that. We did that in class, or just wow, the problem was so big, and then it ultimately the solution was so simple. We all kind of laughed about how it seemed such a big mystery and it was easy. Any cool things like that?
Well, I did have something where I thought it would be really easy to reset somebody's password, but no, there was more that because I'd been shadowing someone. I said, "Hey, can you let me drive and just watch this? Share the screen." So I got in there. I thought that was all I needed to do, but no, there was another place to go. That was. It was a little intimidating because I thought, oh, well, I got this, just reset it. No.
But that's where you pull out that notebook and you make sure to write that up. So the next time,
absolutely,
you got this.
Well, it depends on the company too, on what, their specs are. So, whether they've got the Azure or not.
Mm-hmm.
So it just depends on the company. Sometimes it's an easy thing and sometimes it's not. It just depends.
Fair enough. Yeah. When you work for a managed service provider, like Intiva, you don't know from one phone call to the next whether you're working with an academic institution who's your client or a mechanic who's your client, and they could have completely different technologies there as to how they have things set up. So always useful too on the back end for you all to have access to some sort of knowledge base where you can look at that company, see some of the facts about it, maybe the passwords, the structure, so you can have a quick little brief summary about that. I just thought about this. Do you have roughly an idea based on the clients you all get phone calls for? Have any idea like how big that pool is for you all? 20 different clients, 100 different clients, like any idea?
To be honest, I get calls from California. I don't know how many pods I'm in, to be honest, because I get calls from all over, I know that they were going to restructure where I was going to be at and have me in just a smaller portion, but I get phone calls from all over the place. So
Brittany says she thinks 1,000 plus. So, I didn't know, you're like, oh yeah, you calling from that company? I just heard from that company the other day. Do you get some repeat calls that you've seen?
All the time.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Rodney has a question here. Do you feel prepared to start applying for the entry-level positions at that help desk or other IT-related jobs after your internship?
I still feel a little nervous. I have some anxiety about it. You know what I mean? But I know that Google is there and I can always contact, Jacob if I needed to, or, I've got several people that I've talked to throughout the company. So if I had something I wasn't sure on, I could always ask a question. That they're never not available to answer a question.
Yeah, fair point. And, you mentioned shadowing somebody. The idea is you all are tier 1 tech support. If you can't solve it, then tier 2 can take over.
Absolutely.
And so you have the ability to go ahead if you want to and see the job through completion to where that can be one more, troubleshooting feather in your cap. So you've got that taken care of. So that's a good thing.
Well, you can always, I have asked, hey, can I watch how you remedy this, ticket? Because, if it's something I hadn't seen before, I want to watch how they do it. There's been times where it was really easy and times where they involved another person. It was, that ridiculous.
So sometimes the person you think is the expert has to call in another expert.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So, that's kind of, that's humbling to see that, oh yeah, I guess I don't have to know all this stuff because they don't know all this stuff either. Yeah.
Well, you remember I asked you if I would ever know everything, and you said I would never know everything. So, it does seem like Mount Everest sometimes, but, technology is always evolving. So,
well, I have no problem in class. Like if someone asks me a Cisco question, I am at the comments level now to say, hey, you know what? You go talk to Zan. Or previously I was like, go talk to Scott, because I can't, it's not possible for one person to keep all that in their heads. And having a team is important. And so, yeah, I totally have no comfort problem now saying that is not my area, but I can point you in the right direction. And early in my IT career, I didn't want to say that. I assumed if they hired me, they expected me to be the yes man and have the answers to everything. And there were a couple times where that bit me in the butt because I would say, yes, I can do this project. And I would be on this project and it became a slippery slope where it was like, okay, I don't really know what I'm doing, but I don't want to ask a question because I told them I was going to be able to pull this off for them. And that can be a bad place to be because you can do the wrong thing or whatever. So like Isaiah was saying in our last interview, he constantly asks questions, maybe to the point to where they get annoyed. But I was like, that's totally okay. Because if you are humbled enough to know I want to ask a question and double check my work before I do something wrong, that's a great place to be. It's okay to have training wheels in the beginning. They expect you to eventually to have those training wheels come off, and the questions you ask you bigger world questions like tier 2 questions. But yeah, if you can understand that you asking questions make sure you don't screw up something for the client and you're doing it for the good of the business, that's great. What I would say is I have had situations in class where someone asked me a question and I've been like, did you look on page 28 of the book? No. Please look on page 20 of the book. Like in any conversation like that, you want the person who's asking you the question to have at least tried to do their homework and be able to say, I'm not asking you because I want you to explain the whole thing. I've looked up this and this and this. And so I've done my homework, but I'm still missing the answer to that question. So you want that person to have at least tried. But yes, if you've tried and you've Googled and you can't find the answer, then most certainly ask a question because you may be wasting the company time. The client may be getting angry because you've now spent an hour on this. And if you simply ask a question, it can maybe be answered in 5 minutes with somebody else. So, and then now you'll know. So you want to ask again. So don't be afraid to ask questions.
Well, I know Intiva has different pods, to where they work on certain things that are outside that. Like they have an Apple team that just works on Apple.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So different areas, DC area, which is kind of where we are here.
Mm-hmm.
So, that's nice to know that they have a team. You can put a question out there in that chat, in the team's chat, and, you get an answer or they'll come and help you. So that's nice too, to know that you have that support.
Right. Well, Charlotte, I want to thank you so much for coming in and talking to us about your time here at Mount West, your journey to be here, and your time at Intiva.
I feel very blessed to have all of you. I really do.
Well, you've been a joy to be here. So it's likewise.